What?
We try not to talk too much.
I hit record and was like, what?
Is this going... No, it isn't live.
Not
You're going
live,
to,
not
no,
live.
No, that's right. I was just checking.
I have hit record, and everybody, welcome to the Shrewsbury Biscuit podcast. I'm really loud. We're down. The biscuiteer joining me today is Dee. How's it going, Dee?
It's going good. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Yeah?
I'm actually really good, yeah.
I'm so warm today.
I know.
So warm. It's not agreeing with me today.
The weather at the moment is just a nightmare, because one minute you're like, oh yeah, I can wear shorts, and it's like, I'm going to rain. Like, it's...
No, but I think it fooled me, because I love a winter wardrobe. And we had that cold spell, and I was like, oh yeah, going to bring out all my furs and my leathers, I'm going to get all bougie. And then suddenly it turned around and threw the heat at me, and I was like, no, don't do this. I haven't tanned my legs. I'm not ready.
Yeah.
Don't give me that look.
Yeah. Problems, just bypass that one. I'm a guy. Don't bother about that. Our special guest today is Jean Atkin. Is it Atkin or Atkin?
Well, it's Atkin, but actually my great-grandfather's name was Aiken. He was born on the Shetland Islands, and he ran away to sea at 13. And when he got off the boat in Liverpool, they asked him his name, and he said Thomas Gilbert Hunter Aiken, and they wrote down Atkin. Uh-huh. So curiously, I kind of, whenever anyone asks that, I kind of think, well, doesn't really matter.
I used to know Brigadier years ago, Aitken. Yeah. Sorry, that was random. But yeah, well-established author. We're lucky to have you in Shrewsbury.
Pleasure.
I'm so glad to be speaking to you, because it was a few weeks ago when the guys from Shropshire festivals were like, "Hey, we've got this amazing poet to speak to," and Dee will know this. My head was kind of like, schedule, So we never got around to speaking to you, but now we're here. So thank you so much for joining us.
It's great. Good to be here.
I mean, Dee, I know you've got a bit of homework to do. You've had some homework to do.
Well, I'm very good on the spot. Not on your other podcast. I was rubbish at that. But stuff like this, I can throw it. No, but to be honest, when I do it on the spot, I'm terrible, because I just throw shade all the time. I watch too many of those roast things. My poems turn into raps, and I'm just like roasting you.
See, what we've done today is a bit later on in the show. I'm gonna get into the nitty gritty with Jean first, but afterwards we've written a poem each, and we're gonna get Jean to sort of judge our poems, which
can't wait.
We did get very carried away as soon as on our podcast group chat said about doing a poem off. It got very, very heated very quickly, didn't it?
But
we were just writing poems and just throwing them at each other as if it was funny. Like a fight.
Half of them I can't even read. But I haven't written anything shady about you or anything like that. I've written about me, and kind of that's kind of how I roll. The narcissist in me. So you're an author. You've released, I think it's 7 books I saw on your website. Or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, that's right.
When did all that start with the books?
Well, I've always written, but I didn't. It didn't occur to me to try and get published until I was in my 40s. And so I suppose I was about 45, I got my first poem published. And actually just before that, I'd started working on a children's novel, which was just, it ended up being a kind of 7-year production, because I wrote it around work and 2 young children. And then I got a full-time job for a bit and put it away. And when I got it out again, I thought, so I overhauled it, and it was eventually finished. And it was really written with the first child in mind, and I ended up testing it on the younger one, because he was 4 years younger. And that's that book, The Crow House, which is a sort of spooky mystery. But mostly otherwise, I'm a poet. Yeah.
How adaptable is it? I mean, because I say this a lot. I've said this so many times. I have a synopsis for a book in mine. It's usually in my sock drawer, but at the moment it's in storage. I had the desire to write this story. I guess everybody in their 30s kind of has this desire to write something down. But I've put it away, and I wrote the first chapter. The first chapter is actually really good.
What's it about?
I can't really tell you, because I think this story's worth millions. I started the first. The problem is with me.
Great reason.
Yeah, the problem I have is I don't like spending too much time in my own head, and when you're writing, that's where you are, right?
Yeah.
And like I got at the end of my first chapter, I spent a couple of days on it, and I was just exhausted. It's hard, right? Yeah,
it's hard work. Yeah. You kind of have to make yourself do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. yeah.
But
It's like the thing I would struggle with is like, where do you get, because obviously you've got 7 books now.
Yeah.
And are they all kind of like different genres?
Well, they're all poetry except that one.
So where is it you get your inspiration for them from?
Right. Well, okay. Most of them, I think, are connected by the outdoors, by landscape. I grew up in rural Cumbria. I've always lived near landscape. I do a lot of walking. I did a lot of pony riding on borrowed grass-fed ponies as a child. A lot of it's that, and a sensitivity, I think, to the history of landscape. This book, How Time is in Fields, is about how any place, contains all times. It's layered into the ground, it's layered into the walls. And I'm interested in just the lives of ordinary people and how they worked and how they lived and the fragments of people's stories that are left in places. So I've written a lot of stuff like that, but I like listening to people too. So Understories, which was a project with Whalebone, Shropshire band Whalebone. This is based on Shropshire stories. So a lot of these we gathered orally from people, and some of them come from odd bits of writing, and some of them are really traditional.
So is it like a mixed match of like some are true stories and do you have some which are like myths?
They definitely shade into madness, yes. But some of them are totally true and still mad. Yeah. So I like listening to people and gathering stories. I like looking for them. I like places a lot. I suppose that's a common theme.
Especially in the countryside, like you were saying, there's a lot of those stories, isn't there, that a lot of people aren't aware of. It's for instance, in Pontesbury, there's a story about there used to be a witch that lived there, and she had a baby and a loaf of bread, and she ended up putting the loaf of bread in the cot and the baby in the oven, and it's this whole like myth,
horrendous
that goes
myth,
on, and no one knows if it's true or not.
It's
very
great.
It's very fascinating hearing all these things.
I'm really interested because I don't know that one.
There's also one about a golden arrow as well on the hill. Hidden.
Would that be Mary Webb?
Yes, it is. Yes, is that one as well?
Yeah, the Mary Webb story. Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff.
One of my first questions here, well, I just wrote down some things, was inside the head of a poet, because I imagine, because I see poets and authors as artists with words, right?
Yes.
So you're trying to create a picture of what's inside your head. You've written 7 books. You are active. You're doing workshops. You're constantly busy from the looks of it. What is it like up there when you're constantly thinking of new ideas? Is it hard? Is it good? Is it something that grabs you? You might be doing something like, I need to write that down.
It's exciting. I love it. I mean, obviously, it may be a surprise to you, but poets don't get rich. But it's a lovely way to work. I love it because it's different all the time. It's stimulating. I gather my office is just full of scraps of paper with things written on them.
That was one thing I was going to ask. I was like, I wonder what your office looks like. Do you have like loads of ideas all stuck everywhere?
Yeah, I have lots of stuff in it.
Yeah.
It's a small room, it's the box room, and it's got shelves all around the sides, and it's got lots, obviously, books. It's got a lot of paper stacked up. And it's got objects, weird objects, because I find them very useful for workshops. So there's a badger skull, a sheep's skull, random bones, actually, feathers. There's bits of woods. There's a basket full of stones, which are handy to pass around to people. You would be surprised what you can get from a pebble. There's cloth bags hanging up with all sorts of peculiar bits and pieces that I've ferreted out.
And is that for like when people are learning to write poems, they can describe what they're seeing or feeling?
I get them to, write about what they think about this thing. Sometimes if it's kids, I say to them, here's an object, give it a power.
Yeah.
And we'll write about that. What can it do?
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. See, I'm obsessed with putting people on the spot. We ran Dee through the gauntlet.
He's horrible at it. He's mean.
And we'd get this pen, and we'd be like, talk about this pen for a whole minute. Don't stop.
Yes. But a lot of it is rubbish. We're talking. We're not making sense. We're just talking gobbledygook.
No, that's
really.
right. But it's a very creative technique because
it's like
you start on the pen and you say, well, it's green and you can clip it to your pocket and it's got some writing on it that I can't see and it's got a light in the end. In fact, that is one very, very fancy pen.
It is.
But in actual fact, he stole it from a mine.
This is where it goes. This is exactly how it goes. Yeah.
Which is why it's so handy. It's got a light in it.
Yeah.
I love that, and that must be rewarding, especially when you got to the kind of kids that are like, oh, I ain't writing no poems, that's for girls, and then you give them like something and they're like, and it clicks.
Yeah, and actually I often find that the kids who do not usually engage very well often enjoy poetry. Yeah. There's less to write, and physically less to write often suits them because they often have sort of some form of learning difficulty that gets in the way of them writing essays. But often these kids have got a feel for rhythm and a feel for words, and they have sort of slightly off-the-wall ideas because they're a bit off-the-wall kids. And they can actually sometimes do really well, and it's happened before. I've told out some stroppy kid and said, read that poem, and she reads it, and the teacher says afterwards, they never do anything. And I think, but they do when they're given something that isn't within tram lines. Yeah. And it's a great, I do work for some wonderful schools, I really must say, who absolutely do not work in tram lines. But, it's not, there are some that do. And a lot of adults went through educations where that was the case and have come out so that they go white, if you say, poetry to them.
We spoke a little bit about this before we started recording, which we shouldn't really do. But we were saying about like anything that you did at school, it's meant to be boring. You're not meant to enjoy it. So people obviously when they hear poetry, they're like, oh, I had to do that in school and everything. But it's like we were like last night, I was sitting down on my bed and I was getting carried away with all these different ideas to write about. And it's a really enjoyable thing. And I think kids nowadays, when they can relate it to something like we were saying, like rap and everything like that, there's all these things that are like relatable, describing, and some rhyme, some don't rhyme, but they've all got that artistic vibe rhythm, to it.
I mean, if you sit down with a kid and say one of the greatest poets of all time, Marshall Mathers, Eminem, there you go. And then they're like, oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a wide range. The poetry provides for everybody and all ages, and it's booming at the moment on social media among the very young, and it's different, completely different to the kind of poetry that people are doing PhDs on in universities. But it's the same pleasure in language and rhythm and complex layers of meaning. Yeah, those are the things that grab people. And the problem starts when people say, right, well, this is what the poet was meaning here, because how do you know?
It's all subjective, isn't it? I mean, like that's what Nirvana was saying. He don't know what it means, because when you write something that reflects to you from your feelings and your experiences, somebody reading that might think, oh, that means something different to me.
It does. I mean, that's really important.
But you say you've been doing this. You've always written. Sorry, did you want to add on to that?
Well, no. What I wanted to ask is there's lots of different types of poems. Like I was just saying a second ago, where some rhyme and some don't. Yeah. Are there different names for those things? And
yeah. I mean, there are loads of different form names for poems. I don't think. I mean, for example, a proper sonnet has a rhyme scheme in it, but there are lots and lots of people make variations on sonnets, and they don't always rhyme, or they don't rhyme according to the original rule. And nobody goes, well, that's not a sonnet. Yeah. And I mean, haiku is understood in this country. It's usually described as 5-7-5 syllables. Actually. That's not how it was interpreted in its country of origin. Yeah. It was short, but of course, because it's a completely different language, it didn't quite work out that way. But for example, they are supposed to have some reference to nature, and they are supposed to have a sort of twist in the last line. So there's
a bit like in a song when the song has a bridge in it.
Yes.
It's like a poem. Yeah.
Yes,
exactly,
yeah. There's all sorts of.
And there's the limerick as well, isn't it? Like we were doing this poem off on the thing, and then Shane was like, "Well, that's just a limerick." And I was like, "Is a limerick not a poem?"
A limerick sure is a poem. Yeah, well, exactly.
Did you hear that, Shane?
I was about to segue into a different subject, but you were saying that you've always written. When was the moment for you when you realised you wanted to do this? What was that like for you?
I think a real moment. I went for a walk with a friend through a wood, who's a poet and a botanist, and we were both sort of intending to take notes to make poems, and I got really fascinated by it, and I just got this really good idea, and I was writing things down outside, which I hadn't done before. And it suddenly hit me that what I was writing when I was outside was very lively and very fresh. So I went away and wrote the poem. And at this stage, I was barely published at all, but I banged it into quite a big competition and it won it.
That's pretty nice.
And I was so staggered. And it gave me, I think a lot of us, you need permission to take an artistic thing seriously, because it's not money making, it's not part of a career for most people, and it provided me with that permission to take it seriously and to try to make it better.
What you're doing is
and I realised I could actually really work at this, and I could get better. And you just want to be as good as you can be, and you can always learn. You always because life changes and you change. Things change. Yeah.
I think it's inspiring. I think it's really inspiring when someone can do that, because, like you said, some people have a barrier, don't they?
Yeah, we all have barriers to things. Yeah,
it's very difficult. What sort of the most important work to you as far as advancing your career? What was the moment when you're like? I mean, you said you won a competition straight off the bat.
Yes. I mean, I did. I think probably the big breakthrough for a poet is publication of first collection. And first collection is a proper little book of 50 to 70 poems, the old slim volume of verse, and it's a hard thing to get, and that's probably the big one. This is my second collection, and I am working now towards the third. And
they're all. I was going to ask it. I was like, what's in the pipeline? Like, when you do your collections, are they all kind of like in the similar idea to each other? Like, if you write one, could you write one about basically this year, what's happened? Is that inspiration too? Is that something that you kind of like want to step away from and focus on a bit more positive? Or
my third book's not about this year, but it will have a sort of gathering theme, and it is, I think, probably a rather more political book than anything I've written before. I've got in between the sort of collections, which are really hard work, is the fun stuff, which is pamphlets like this. Yeah. And I have a lovely one coming out next spring with Fairacre Press, who are a little Shropshire publisher. And that's going to be fun. The book's called, it's a little book, it'll be a little book, a thin book. It's called Fan Peckled, because I found this wonderful book. It's called the Shropshire Word Book. And it was written in 1889, I think. It's out of print, but there are rare facsimile copies. And my partner managed to get me one for Christmas. I was overjoyed, and spent Christmas dipping through lists and lists of words, old words from Shropshire, which bits of dialect. And it's a great book. It tells you what they mean and where he collected them.
Nice.
So Fan Peckled just means freckled.
Oh,
and
wow.
I think, if I remember rightly, it said pulver batch.
So are they kind of like slang in the sense, like
no,
Shropshire
dialect.
Slang?
Dialect.
Oh, dialect. Okay.
Yeah. So I wrote 12 poems. I just went through the book and picked out the words. 12 words I liked a lot, and then wrote a poem for each one. So
see, I love that idea.
And that's lovely. Yeah. It's a joy because I just love these words. Click it. And butts and fairings, and a corve of oddlings, and oh God, a wonderful one, Shall I Go Naked?
Oh wow!
Shalloganaked.
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 The phrase comes from, allegedly, this. It's in the book, and it says shalloganaked, used when someone's going out wearing something completely inappropriate to the weather, as in, are you really going to go outside wearing that shalloganaked thing?
I'm going to steal that word.
I think it should come back in, shouldn't it?
I think it should do. Yeah,
exactly. There's these young people off to the clubs in shalloganaked skirts.
That's exactly where I'd use it as well. I come at the ball going like, what are you doing here like that?
Oh, okay, so here's me thinking. I was thinking me at the flower show getting drenched in the rain in my shorts.
That was brilliant.
You were wearing your shalloganaked shorts.
Yeah. I like that.
Exactly. No, so that's coming out.
I'm writing this word down
such
right now.
fun. Yeah, write it down. All one word.
I really like that. At the weekend, I spoke to one of the biggest realtors on the west coast of America, Tony Patillo, and she was saying on her website she likes to take a word, dissect it, and just look at that word. And I was like, okay, well, what we need to do is we need to get together, and then you do your version of the word, and I'll do the British version. Yeah, because
wow,
because there are so many differences in our dialogue between the US and the UK.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, so she was like, oh, that's really cool.
See, words are fun.
And you've just done this thing for Arts Alive as well. Tell us what Arts Alive is and what you've done for it.
Yeah, Arts Alive, they organise, it's a wonderful organisation which is quite long, it's very long lived in Shropshire. It's been organising rural performances and a sort of wonderful travelling cinema called Flicks in the Sticks.
Oh yes, I've been to Flicks in the Sticks.
Yes, and it's great, because it makes things happen in the villages, because Shropshire's very rural, and it's a long way, even if everybody wanted to drive for 2 hours to go to see a cinema, so it's great. It takes these things around the village halls, and so there are Arts Alive's audiences all over Shropshire, and the promoters are the people who run the village halls. Yeah. So it's very local, very, very grassroots. And they had this great idea in the summer, and they asked their audiences and their promoters a handful of questions about lockdown. They went and said to them, in a sentence, how was your lockdown? They said, did you do things in lockdown that you don't normally do? What did you learn? Anything? How did you feel? And then they sent me a great big selfie going on.
Sorry,
he always does it.
I know, it's funny to watch. Anyway, they sent me all this sort of big sheaf of paper with all these answers on, and asked me to write a poem about it. And picks it up. It's been published this month in My Shrewsbury magazine.
Shout out to My Shrewsbury. Catering's on the show tomorrow.
Yeah, so there you go. Big shout out for My Shrewsbury. And do you want me to read you the poem?
Yes, please. That'd be amazing.
I think that'd be good. They said wonderful things. It was great. It came together very naturally. In lockdown, we found rest and distancing. The light of April and May, so brilliant. Everyone walked and cycled, and all the lanes were lit with louder birdsong. Families all climbed out of cars and onto bicycles. Rainbows grew in windows. We felt guilt at our luck, if we were lucky. We were frightened at the panic buying. We remembered tales of wartime, shortages and rationing, how our parents scraped the pan, reused the fat. We adjusted like cogs in a clock, clicking together, then slipping, then clicking on, each held on the escapement's tooth. I can't breathe, cried the man, although Earth was breathing easier. The man died. We took to the streets with masks on. We cried. We walked with gloves and hand sanitizer, missed the sea, missed Beatrix, sweet new granddaughter, missed our mums. We were healed in our gardens and grew food. No planes flew over our flowers or streaked our blue skies. We found our legs and walked for health, did early morning yoga, wondered if to wear makeup for Zoom. We did more reading. We did less reading. On Zoom, we did a speed awareness course. On Zoom, we clicked a link to a virtual pub with our own real beer and real but virtual people. We missed camping, live storytelling, and catching a friend's eye to share a smile. Each night, the daily death toll and the grief. We clinked pound coins into a tea tin to buy eggs at the roadside, otherwise flashed past plastic at the checkout. On Thursday nights we clapped the NHS, then added all the low-paid people who turned out to be essential. Was lockdown a peg to hang the future on? We don't want the old normal back. Life and death came closer, and we learned the world is smaller and more troubling now. We know we must pull together, not apart. We realise our needs are really very simple.
Beautiful.
See, I find like listening to something like that, the different emotions in it is very similar to what lockdown was. It wasn't. It was started with a little bit of like worry, fear, kind of like panic. We didn't know where we were. To then like the humorful side of it, like you were saying about not knowing to wear makeup on Zoom. I went through that.
Yes, of course.
And all these different things, and then you start feeling like it's a bit normal, but then you've got those wobbles in there again, where it's a bit like unsure, uncertainty, and then you even bring up kind of like the old norm. I don't think we want the old one back. I think this new one is what it'll be impossible to get the old norm back anyway, I would think. But whenever this new norm's going to be, whether we're in it now or
this is what people wrote. We don't want the old normal back.
No.
They'd seen things that
like you
that
said about
needed
the low
to be
paid,
changed.
like you said about the low paid workers,
yeah.
stuff like that. I think it's a massive eye opener.
It is. It's incredibly important, and that we need to remember the people on so little money who put themselves at risk to keep the supermarkets open or to collect the bins, and the fact that, the NHS has worked through this, people are burnt out. And there were before this happened, there were nurses using food banks because they don't earn a living wage. Yeah. And,
And you've been able to write all of that in one poem, and it's at the first page. As soon as you open the magazine,
yes,
first page.
Very nice. I looked all the way through from the back. That's not there.
But I'm sure so many people are going to see that and read it and be able to relate to it.
I hope so, because I think these people really had something to say.
Because I think people start to understand that we've all gone through a very similar. Some people have had different ups and lows, but we've all gone through a very similar. I hate the word journey.
Yeah, but there are recognisable things for most people. I think.
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I love the one with the growing rainbows in windows. I think it's a really nice line. Sorry, I'm interrupting out there.
No. I'm thinking about the NHS clapping thing. That was a funny thing as well, because I remember the first time I didn't know whether it was going to happen, so I did a Facebook Live on the Biscuit page. I was kind of like, let's see what happens. I was so excited, and I was really touched by it.
The cars were driving past tooting at you as you were all clapping, wasn't it?
Yeah. That was really nice because it was the first time it happened.
Yeah.
And I was quite moved by it. But then after a few weeks, I was kind of like, I get it, but it's hypocrisy at its worst while we're doing it,
Yeah.
And I hated it. I hated that so much, when they were.
I know. I can't. We continued to do it, but increasingly, you felt this had just become a piece of good PR. When actually we were taking terrible advantage of these people, and that the government had to be forced to to take away that payment that they made immigrant workers in the NHS, that they were just taking another £600 off them
very quickly
for nothing.
Yeah, very quickly.
It's outrageous.
It became very political, didn't it?
Yes, it did. And the truth is, it is political.
Yeah, it's hard to
people's
escape
lives.
it.
Like I got to stage where I was going to delete Twitter. It was kind of like.
It's a good point, actually.
It was like, if you voted, if you're a Tory, you're not allowed to clap, and all things like this. I was like, oh my gosh, it's appalling. Do you not see that on Twitter?
No, well, I try to stay away from Twitter, but we were just talking with me about social media and kind of how lockdown has kind of created this real nasty vibe when it comes to social media. Trump, people have been locked in, and I just wrote can't escape, because when you cannot leave your house. I mean, I was working throughout the whole thing, but there's a lot of people that were constantly at their home, and all you've got is your TV and your phone. alone, and then so you've got Facebook, Twitter, it's all these things, and you cannot escape that. It must have been terrible for a lot of people seeing all this political jargon going on, these battles, the Black Lives Matter things. It must be terrible.
But I think it also can be a lifesaver as well, because some people live alone.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
They would have no contact with anyone else. And I think them able to have social media and see that the world is still ticking along, or seeing that their friends are just doing exactly the same as them, and just look at it and go, like, you know what, I'm not missing anything. Because nothing's going on.
I saw particularly older people living in isolated places actually posting how they felt, to be honest, social media had been a lifeline through it, because they were alone otherwise. Exactly.
And to see that everyone else is alone as well. Nothing's going on and you're not missing anything.
Right.
It's brilliant.
Yes. If you're in Shrewsbury, you could have listened to the Shrewsbury Biscuit and
obviously
heard what's going on. But the point of that is, you said there's been this massive wave of poets just coming out the woodwork, and you think it's because of that, because there were so many high tension emotions.
Well, I think that's the interesting thing about poetry. I mean, it's something that for a lot of people, school has left a lot of people anxious about poetry, and I think it's because really, examination and analysis is all wrong. It's not the way you need to go at poetry. When we're in any form of sort of big change in life and life crises, but really just change, because it's all about love and death. Yeah. We reach for poetry every time. Yeah. Poetry when people are in love, poetry when people die, when babies are born, people turn to poetry. Often, there'll be somebody in the family who can knock out a rhyming couplet, and it's hugely popular then. And people go, people look for poems for funerals. Yeah. There are collections of poems suitable for funerals.
Do you think there's such a thing as a really bad poem? Because obviously whoever writes it is writing it from their own perspective. It's a bit like looking at a piece of art. You could have a Picasso next to a Monet, and they're extremely different, but they're the interpretation.
Difference is absolutely fine. And I mean, I absolutely stand by the fact that everybody who writes has a voice. What you would be able to see rapidly is the difference between a more skilled poem and a less skilled poem, and that is a matter of somebody learning how to do it. And people, it's like with all the arts, some people have a natural gift for it, and everybody can make it better than they started, because you can learn as well.
That's why I like having a team of people around me, because I'm putting a website together for USOC, the other podcast I work with. I wrote down all the bits for the website, blah, 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 blah. This is what we are, this is who we are. Sent it to my team. Kenny Aldrich was like, I'll streamline this. He basically got a thesaurus out and made this really long paragraph into something that was actually quite enjoyable to read, and that's what I like having around me.
I think it's absolutely true. I mean, working with other people is naturally, it's inherently creative, and we spark off each other. It's hugely important. A lot of my not writing work so much as community writing in community kind of works like that. So at the moment I'm working with Ruth Gibson, who's a ceramicist, who you should have on the podcast. And she does really interesting work. We've done a project together before, but the current one is called Mud and Moments, and it's a community arts project up at the Aston Lochs Nature Reserve near Queen's Head. And it's the most gorgeous place. It's a new nature reserve. Only been there 2 years, and it's incredible. In 2 years, it's been turned from sort of turned mud into... It's a wildlife paradise. It's full of wildflowers. Dragonflies sit on you if you sit down. Nice. You sort of I put my book down and the grasshopper appeared. Little baby frogs, struggling through the grass. There's beautiful ponds and bulrushes.
Good place for inspiration.
It's absolutely gorgeous. So we've been running workshops where, all socially distanced and covered in hand gel. People work with Ruth to make clay tiles by sort of imprinting sort of what they find on site. So seed heads, leaves,
I've done
berries.
That. It's quite a fun activity.
Very
actually.
Fun, very good fun. And I have the other half of the group, and we go off and we sit round the pond and we write and we swap in from what we're writing about, and
Beautiful.
I go around at 2 yards distance saying, that bit would be best at the top,
Yeah.
That's your best bit.
Do you do many of, like, because when you read your poem, then you read like, obviously you wrote it, so you know how it should be read. But do you do many of, like, obviously not at the moment, but many events, like we were talking about Flicks and the Sticks and the organisers of that, and then other events,
readings and stuff like that.
Yeah, do you do many readings?
Yes. I mean, I usually do. I mean, it was another thing that disappeared smartly because this How Time Is in Fields, the second collection came out last year. And I had, at least 10 readings set up, all of which have gone, inevitably.
Gone in the wind.
And so, I have a stack of these that I need to sell. They're available on my website.
we will give your website a good shout out so people
bless
can go
you.
for it. Yes,
yeah, that's right. It's the usual thing, I mean, basically, COVID has affected everybody, and it hasn't made anybody. Hasn't really advanced anybody's efforts.
No, I don't. I think some people have had that very faint line in the dark cloud, very faint silver lining. But I think the vast majority of us are like, it's the worst year ever, isn't it?
It's very, very difficult. Yeah.
I had this conversation. It's subjective, absolutely subjective. I mean, I was speaking with Big Eater last week, and she was telling me actually she's had a good 2020, and I was like, kind of like. I learned how to, because the Team Biscuit will know how I dealt with it at the beginning. It wasn't very good. I was kind of like, what am I going to do? But I learned to overcome. I learned to adapt, and I learned how to change
Al's
things.
year was already shocking before the pandemic.
Yeah.
You mentioned the house.
That's okay. And the floods and everything.
Oh, the floods.
Yeah, it was. So I learned how to adapt all that, and I think it's made me stronger.
Yes.
I'm staff, but I've had a good 2020. I've learnt new things as well, especially when it comes to the biscuit. Starting the biscuit, I've learnt so much, and poetry is one of them. I got invited to a poetry slam at Tim Dawes' house. Tim Dawes is a poet.
I know Tim.
Yeah, he's amazing, brilliant guy. Every time I see him, he's like, all right, word for the biscuit. Yeah, that's a really good Tim Dawes impression, by the way, if you've ever met him.
I have.
Yeah. He's a great guy. I love him, and that was the first time I've been to something where poetry was live.
Yeah.
So in my face, people reading to me. I do have a problem with eye contact when I was younger. I did have a problem with sort of intense talking, so I was always worried about it. But I had such a good time. It was actually really moving. I just felt like this is really nice, actually. What was I so scared of? Do you meet people like that are terrified of poetry that kind of come around a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely, all the time. Yeah, absolutely. And people who write, I write poems with people, just members of the public in places where the poor things didn't expect to find a working poet. And people go, I can't write a poem. I can't do that. I was rubbish at school. And I say, well, okay, I worked at Acton Scott for a summer as their poet in residence, and so I sort of, descended on luckless visitors, and obviously, sometimes it was just like, I said to one man, well, just tell me why you're here and what attracts you about this place. I'm going to just write it down and we'll see if we can make something. And he started talking, and he was telling me all about his childhood experiences living on a farm in Shropshire. And he had incredible things to say, all about, how they had to go down the garden to the loo. And he remembered this, in great detail. He had a great poem about an outside loo. And then he said, well, I didn't know I could, that's my words, It was so pleased. And it was lovely because I would give him the poem and he'd take it away with him and, and talk to this amazing 2-year-old who'd just been put on a shire. And this top, I said, look, tell me what it was like up there. And I got down on the floor, and this child said, he said, it was like a sofa with fur on. I could see all the way to his ears, which is a rhythm. Yeah. So I just wrote it down and passed it to them and said, look, his first poem.
I think it is, writing poems is one of these very odd things where it's not one of those things where you can turn around and say, oh, anyone can do it, because I think you do have to have the right mind to be able to write a very good poem. But it is one of those things I think anyone can give it a go and just feel good. Get something down on paper and flow with it and feel like... Yeah. Because it's very easy to turn around and say, oh, I can't do that and I can't do this.
No. You'd be surprised what you can do. And that's the thing. And I see a lot of what I do, I'm just trying to enable people to see that they've got that potential.
Oh, yes.
And you do a lot with that. I saw all morning I've been looking at your website, and there was the workshop you did where you got kids to write small little lines and you put them all together to make one big poem.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that? What was that all about?
Yeah,
It was amazing.
I think I called it Feeding the Creature or something. And because basically the kids in pairs, they picked a couple of words off a plate. And I said, right, we aren't going to identify this creature, but I want you to write me a line between the two of you, using the words you've got, which describe the creature, and I want you to think about feeding it and where it would sleep and how you would touch it and how you would handle it and you know how it looks at you. And so, you know, if they got claw or something, they wrote about, you know, the sound of its claws clattering across the kitchen floor, and they were amazing, and you know, sort of went round the room then, stood at the front with a pen, one of those pens that write on white on the
whiteboard,
smart boards
in
classrooms. Okay. Oh, they're clever, because you can do it in different colours. You just have to dab it, and it'll turn it. The next bit you can write in purple. This was good because we sort of had edited it as we went along. So I just wrote them all up, and then we scribbled all over the board, moving the lines up and down while the poor classroom teacher was on the computer at the side, and I'm going, that's line 1, numbering them off. But you know, in an hour we'd written this amazing poem. You know, because kids are so they never disappoint. Kids always produce.
No, I was going to say, do you find them easy to work with in the sense that their imagination is just out there? So when they're describing these things,
it's mostly that they just feel freer. Adults come with a critic on the shoulder,
definitely,
and that's always harder. I was working with a woman the other week who said, "I was so good at English at school, and now I don't know how to start." And she was just stopping herself. She had a constant sense of criticism, and she
I think it's a fear of judgment, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, it is. It totally is. And it was her own judgment as much as anything.
I think yourself can be your biggest critic, isn't it?
Yeah, we can be incredibly hard on ourselves. And, you know, imposter syndrome is a real and totally everyday thing. I can't be surprised that anybody needs to name it, to be quite honest, because it's just part of life.
I find it really hard to understand, sort of, when it comes to writing and poetry, things like this. When I was younger, if somebody would have come up to me and go, "Oh, the best TV show is your imagination," or, you know, the best things you can do are all up here, it's an eye roller for me when I was a kid, because I was so full of energy, bouncing off the walls. I was like, I want to see there's flashing lights over there, there's this over there, there's music. And so when somebody's like, "No, sit down and write something beautiful from inside your head," I'd be like,
"No, that was the wrong approach." But you would have been better if somebody had taken you outside. Let your charger out in some place, and then said, write down how you feel right now, and then run. I want one line, and then you run off again.
Yeah, take a GoPro with you these days. If you take a GoPro and just record your thoughts and your
yes, exactly. Yeah, there's loads of ways to do it. You do not, and people who say, "I can't spell," it doesn't matter. And I say to kids, as long as you can read it back, I don't care.
Do you think there's a difference between someone that writes something more they're content and then when they're feeling an extreme emotion?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And of course, in a first draft, extreme emotion is very powerful. Yeah. You might want to not remove it, but think about how it plays into the rest of the poem when you edit it. I do a lot of editing. You know, I mean, the several drafts of all these things. And when I work with kids, when I work with anybody, I try to get them to think in terms of drafts. So that, you know, the moment, for example, what I did when lockdown happened was I put poetry courses online. So I've been running online poetry courses since March, and a new one's just started. So basically, we meet once a week on Zoom, but the rest of it's by email. And people send me their first draft, and I provide them with close written feedback on it, which literally is things like saying, the old joke, "I don't think you need the last line," because often the poem has a really good stopping place 2 lines before somebody stops. Because in the last line, they decide they need to underline the point they're making.
I find it hard to stop.
Yeah,
when I wrote this one, I'm about to read, I think you probably wrote the last paragraphs, or the last lines.
Very, very commonly, people write themselves into it. So the first sort of couple of lines you might not need, and very often they write their way out of it as well. And that's a very common thing that goes on. And sometimes it's just like altering word order because you can hear that it's going to sound better. I work aloud a lot. I'm always chanting it in my head, and indeed,
it's also the idea of leaving a mystery at the end of it.
Sometimes
so
it is. Sometimes
on.
It totally works. Poetry is often about some ambiguity, which is why it's a bit of a joke when examiners go, "Tell us what this means," because when the poet wrote it, they probably weren't quite sure what it meant anyway. No. I've certainly read things written about my poems, and I think, really? But how it sounds is so important, I think. It's got to sound right, and you've got to say it aloud to get and to smooth it out. If you trip over your words, there's something wrong with it. You have to lose something.
Is there a standard rhythm that you go by when you're writing your poems, or do them all have a slight different rhythm?
I think they do have different rhythms, and they really should. I think it'd be a bit dull, but. They must have a rhythm, If they don't, then they're really pros.
I like the kind of punchy stuff. Like if you remember my Rick onesie, the Rick onesie of mine that I read out before, the one I've just done now is very similar. In the
Are
way
we going to get this poem now?
Yes, we're going.
Oh, come on, I think so.
Okay, so I'll go first.
Okay. I haven't actually written anything. What I've done is
dear.
I'll do a forfeit. It's fine. So I wanted to write something based on this year. And obviously, when I write stuff, I'm so
can't
negative.
Freestyle poetry. I don't know.
No, I'm not going to. But so I've written 2 massive pages of bullet points throughout the year of everything that happened. I've even included Caroline Flack. Everyone forgot about Caroline Flack.
Well, there's so much gone in 2020. Caroline. People are like, what? California's on fire?
Yeah, I know. So I wrote all those things. And then it got to 1 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, you know what, I should actually go to sleep. And then so I thought my forfeit could be if I finish it and then I do a live on our Facebook page.
Okay. Well.
He just gave me the look. He was like,
"You've set me up for destruction here." Okay, I'm going to read you my poem.
I'm very kind.
You can you can ruin it. You can be the Simon Cowell of poetry. Do it. Okay. I'm not very good. I wrote this sort of half an hour before you came into the studio because I was rushing around.
As much as that, fine,
yeah,
good.
Okay, so
are you going to rap it or just say
it? Okay. So this wall. Sorry, my grammar's terrible. Really, so let's try this again. This wall, it holds me from being me. I feel tangled, trapped. Please let me be free. I'm shouting as loud as I can. You, hey you. Invisible I am, mute, but no one has a clue. For years I wandered with them, all of them. Trying hard I am, desperate, was bursting from the hem. Finally, salvation found through my friend Mike and I. I feel fresh, free. Finally found Alex. Yes, that's me. That wall is now a ghost, a reminder to some. I feel comfort knowing just how far I've come. I'll take you with me.
I think that's great. I really like the imagery.
Yeah?
The way you get straight into it with the wall.
Yeah.
I thought that was working so well. I think. Pass it here for a minute.
She's going to mark it now.
Yes.
No, I'm not going to mark it.
Judge your grammar.
I am not going to mark it.
Is terrible.
I think the imagery works really well. I think the whole idea of a wall that comes in the second line, second word, is very effective because I was seeing the wall and seeing this, imagining a place in which you were not able to be heard, a place in which you were invisible and muted. And it works really effectively. That line, and was bursting from the hem. There's that sense of desperation and urgency there. And you finally found Alex. It works. And the wall now a ghost. Yeah. Or also perhaps the wall is tumbled. You could consider that as a sort of to continue your wall image.
It's a weird thing
the wall, has crumbled, or there's a door in it now.
That door is a great analogy,
Yeah?
actually, because
Doors are good.
the wall will never be gone. It'll always be there because I find myself, when I'm in a shop, I feel like I've got to rush, because I feel like I'm taking too long.
Yes.
Silly things like that. That's the wall. That is what
that's what it does.
That
Yeah,
anxiety.
so it's actually still all, it's not, you haven't entirely left it. It's always going to be part of you because it's part of your history. Yes. Yeah, that's a really good idea, actually. A wall in a backpack. Or you have to cram it back in. And take the door instead. Yeah. Nice line at the end. I'll take you with me. I think that's good.
Oh, thank you.
Because the sort of work you do now, Alex, you're taking people with you. Yeah. That's good.
Yeah, that's
really
the whole
good.
idea. I'm glad it kind of interpreted well.
Do you want me to read my 4-liner about the Shrewsbury Biscuit that I wrote on the way down?
Yes.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
Go on. It's very silly. Okay.
I like it.
Because I never asked why it's called the Shrewsbury Biscuit. I assume it has to do with some enthusiasm for the Shrewsbury Biscuit. It's very, very famous.
No, it's all about Al.
Always about me.
He doesn't realise that the show. If you've ever eaten, anyone listening who's ever actually tried a Shropshire biscuit will know they are absolutely disgusting.
It's conceptual.
But Al is not originally from here,
okay.
so he doesn't know better.
I don't know. I've had nice ones.
I had
Depends.
I had no idea there was a Shrewsbury biscuit, and then I was living in Shrewsbury. I still had this thing. It's all about knowledge for me, or lack of knowledge. I'm learning about the Shrewsbury biscuit.
Yeah, you are.
Okay, well, here we go then.
Yes.
The great joy of the Shrewsbury Biscuit this year is we make it right here, so it won't be affected by Brexit.
Yeah.
Oh, you said the B word.
It's because I rhymed it with biscuit.
Yeah, true.
Biscuit and Brexit. I thought, oh dear, I can't. I was wandering down Port Hill thinking, rhymes for biscuit, and when I hit Brexit, I thought, unfortunately, I can't leave this one alone.
It's gonna nag you if you didn't.
Well, it isn't, and I kind of imagine now that people are going to, go and lay in a stock of Shrewsbury biscuits as well as the bog roll.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Well, saying that though, it was we were talking on our group chat because we've always got this thing where people always ask where'd you get the name from and everything.
Yes,
it is in Australia. They've got so they've brought out a biscuit. And it is called the Shrewsbury Biscuit, but it's not the one that we know. Basically, theirs is way nicer than ours. It's basically jammy Dodgers.
It's like BN. Remember those BN
biscuits? It's like
biscuits?
a BN jammy Dodgers. It's got this, exactly, with this funny face, but it's kind of like a jammy Dodger kind of like idea.
Biscuits. There is a podcast in that, isn't there? Really?
Anyone living in Australia, please send us some. Imagine it.
We do have listeners in Australia, actually.
I know, that's what I mean.
You'd have to send back a pack of the best Shrewsbury biscuits.
We'll send something back amazing.
Shout out to Rich Carter, one of our listeners in Australia. If you need me to send you postage and packaging, that's fine, but send us some Shrewsbury biscuits.
Yeah.
From Australia! Yeah, the Shrewsbury biscuit. Right, okay. Jean, thank you so much for joining us on the show. It's been amazing to talk to you. I'd love to give you an opportunity to tell people about your website and where they can buy your books from, because I think it's important to support local artists, so please do.
That's very kind. The book is called How Time Is in Fields, and it's got a lot of walking in it and a lot of Shropshire in it.
Good.
It's about how time is led into all our places. And it's about people, and it's about life. Okay. And it's available on my website, which is www.jeanatkin.com. Very easy to find. And there's lots of other stuff on there, and lots of it's about Shropshire. And it's been a huge pleasure. It's been a real pleasure being here. It's been great. Thank you very much for having me.
And I'm sure we'll see each other down the line again, because I see your name pop up everywhere, and like the biscuits everywhere. So we'll do something together. Maybe we could do a biscuit poetry slam sometime, raise some money. That's a great idea.
There's a thought.
That would be quite a good idea, actually.
Yeah, that sounds fun. That sounds
open
fun.
night, open poetry night.
Just inform you now, the boys are extremely competitive.
Really?
They're very
You do surprise me.
That's just a limerick, though.
It's like me, I was like, I'll just do a Facebook Live later on and tag everyone in it and just shame myself, let everyone see, because this is edited, so he could edit his out.
Yes, that's right.
I just thought about this. You could edit that to make it, like, afterwards, you could hear mine on the live and be like, you know what, mine was rubbish, I'm going to jazz it up. You write all about the door in it, and before you know, he's cheated people.
Well, there you go.
I don't know. I don't think it's cheating. It's just
it's editing.
Editing.
Polishing the gem.
Polishing the gem, yes.
thank you so much for joining us. Listeners, make sure you check out our website. I've updated it, so all of our audio is available on our website. We're at www.theshrewsburybiscuitpodcast.co.uk. Our website is made by our friends at Web Orchard, amazing people. They're currently working on a website for USUC as well. If you want a website that looks beautiful, make sure you go see them at Web Orchard. And this has been recorded at Biscuit Studios in the Parade Shopping Centre behind St Mary's. Beautiful building. I was just talking with Amy from Madame Lammer's Flowers about how beautiful this building is actually looking in on the inside. They've updated the car park, so there's now an up-to-date car park, proper short stay car park at the front there now. It's looking amazing, and make sure you come and check it out. All right, guys, we'll just get out of here.
Yeah. It's lovely to meet you.
Yeah, lovely. You too. It's been great.
Thank you very much, and peace out.